What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball. Today is Thursday, February the 27th. We have a classic mid-major Thursday on deck with a ton of implications for conference tournaments, a lot of elite matchups. We haven't always had Thursdays like this, so very excited to talk about it. Before we get started, if you enjoy this, please like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. All that helps a ton, especially for a new channel like this. And it means a lot. All right, let's dive right in. We'll go game by game. There is one big game up top in the high major conferences. That's where we'll start. It's Rutgers taking on Michigan. This game has a total of 154. The spread is 9.5 points in favor of Rutgers. Injuries in the game. Sam Walters missed a couple for Michigan. He's very deep in the rotation. Reuben Jones did not play in their last game with an illness. We're not sure on his status tonight. He's the biggest question. This game is a rematch from February 3rd. Michigan did win 66-63. As usual, they turned the ball over 17 times. But at the end of the day, they were simply more efficient than Rutgers. A lot of that just scoring the ball. Rutgers has had a lot of problems, and I think there's no other way to say this. They're just a disappointment this year, considering they have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. They're 1-8 against the top 25. Their only win came against a shorthanded Illinois, who ranks 22nd now. They have losses outside the top 100 to Kennesaw State at 135 and Princeton at 174. Michigan is streaky. When they play to their potential, they look like they could be a Final Four team. And then there's games like what we saw against Nebraska earlier this week, where neither team scored 50 points. They're 2-2 against the top 25, beat Purdue and Wisconsin. They have two losses outside the top 50, 74 Wake Forest and 91 Minnesota, but just an overall solid body of work. Stylistically, Rutgers plays a tall lineup, but they're actually pretty ineffective. And for having Ace Bailey on your team, it's actually pretty shocking that Rutgers is as bad as they are. And at the end of the day, part of this is just what they did in the transfer portal. I don't know how their finances stacked up at the end of the day. They probably spent a lot of money on Harper and Bailey. But when your big portal addition is Jordan Durkak from very, very low level of competition, they essentially just have two players and the rest of this team is basically a zero. Anyway, they're not that effective inside despite having, an absolute stud in there. They're 199th in rebounding, 178th at interior scoring, 222nd at interior defense. That's just not good enough, especially when you're going to face Michigan, who's playing the double 7-foot lineup. Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf both can shoot threes. They're 39th in rebounding, 5th in interior scoring, 35th in interior defense. That's just a monumental mismatch. For good measure, this team is pretty decent at shooting threes. Two players above 40%. They're 81st overall in three-point percentage. Rutgers is 185th in three-point defense. This is basically just across the board, Michigan advantages. The only spot where you have to worry about Michigan, turnovers. Lucky for them, Rutgers is 195th in turnovers forced. They forced 17 in the first game and still lost. That's going to be pretty tough for them to overcome. Rutgers, that is, not having this advantage even. We make this just outside the projected spread. I'm debating playing 9.5 for Michigan. This has come down quite a bit. I'm a little nervous after what I saw out of Michigan earlier this week against Nebraska. But man, mathematically, this adds up. If this gets down to 9, 8.5, this would certainly be a play on the Michigan side. And of course, forgot to say this, we are talking about some gambling on the show. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play in most areas. Next up, so it's elite in the mid-majors. We're going to try to highlight a lot of these conferences and talk about scenarios for conference tournaments, everything like that. In the Big West, we have UC San Diego taking on Cal State Northridge. This is a 6-point spread in favor of the road team, UC San Diego. Total is 150. UC San Diego is just an awesome team this year. They're currently live to get an at-large bid. So they'll probably win the conference tournament. They're at least the favorite. But if they don't win it, they're still live to get a bid to the NCAA tournament. They're 35th on like KenPom now. This team is awesome. No major injuries. Northridge has one. It's PJ Fuller the second. Not sure on his status. And again, this is a huge matchup in the Big West. This is number 1 versus number 3. It's a rematch. San Diego did win the first matchup 79-54 on their home floor. That was on January 25th. Northridge shot 33% from the floor, 67% from the free throw line. They lost the turnover battle. They lost the foul battle. You can see how this game got away from them. You can't lose that many different statistical categories, especially by wide margins, and expect to win. Resume-wise, UC San Diego's 1-1 against the top 50. They have a win over number 49 Utah State. They still only have 2 wins in the top 100 all year, but they only have 2 losses out of it. The worst one came to number 58 Seattle. We'll talk about them later. So it's a very good body of work for UC San Diego, mostly propped up by the sheer amount of wins, but having one top 50 win at least does help them. Northridge is 0-1 against the top 50. They only have 1 win in the top 100 all season long. Again, this conference doesn't give you a ton of opportunities. That win came against number 72 UC Irvine. 3 losses outside the top 100, but the worst one came to Cal State Bakersfield. They're 231st. Weird stylistics for these two teams. Neither team is tall, but somehow Northridge is 9th in rebounding. UC San Diego comes in 228th. A lot of this, I think, just stems from the aggressiveness on the glass we see for Northridge. But that's always weird to see. Sometimes in these smaller conferences, you do get weird metrics like this, but they're aggressive on the glass. Otherwise, that's about it for advantages. UC San Diego, they're virtually superior across the board. They're 28th in effective field goal percentage, 24th in interior scoring, 58th from 3. On the other side, Northridge is 136th in effective field goal, 156th on the interior, and 134th from 3. Defensively, UC San Diego has the edge. And while that's slight in some areas, this team has a massive mismatch in the turnover game. They force the 2nd most turnovers in the entire country, and Northridge is 298th in turnovers committed. That's a huge mismatch in favor of San Diego. We make this just outside the spread. It is very close, so we're not showing a ton of value. And currently, Northridge is taking money at home. This opened at -7, and it's come down to -6. San Diego, UC San Diego is on the verge of being a play. This is another one. We'll wait and see if we can't grab another line later. And on that, briefly, if you want access to the Discord, a few things are included. 1, we project every single game, sides, and totals. 2, the major games we're projecting player props. So there's 3 or 4 of those today, highlighted by the Michigan Rutgers game. But, like on a Saturday, that'll be 30 games. And 3, we take a lot of games at different times during the day. The ones we talk about today, we've hit early because the model shows value. We also hit a lot late when injury news breaks. Some throughout the day when lines change, but all that is available for $10 a week, $30 for a month, no long-term commitments. Building a lot of tools for March Madness that I hope to display soon. We'll see if we can't have a tournament predictor for the ASUN out, sort of like a pre-look at what we have for March Madness. But I'm hoping to have at least one video on that out this weekend. If not, hopefully early next week. Next up. Link is below if you're interested. Chattanooga takes on UNC Greensboro. The spread in this game is 1.5 in favor of Greensboro. The total is 143. Only injury, Sean Cassano for Chattanooga, but this is a huge game in the SoCon. Number 1 and number 2 are facing off. Greensboro took the first game 78-75 on the road. Almost every statistical category came in close in that game. It was an awesome game. Greensboro shot 48% from 3. It never hurts when you do that. And now this is an enormous game for Greensboro. They're 1 game back in this conference, but they hold head-to-head. So number 1 is currently Chattanooga. Number 2 is Greensboro. So, just enormous game in this conference as we approach the conference tournament season. Resume-wise, Chattanooga is 0-4 against the top 100. Their best win came over number 104 Samford. They only have 2 losses outside the top 125. They were both really bad. Number 283 Austin P and number 257 Mercer, but it's still a pretty good body of work for Chattanooga. Greensboro's 1-2 against the top 100. They did beat number 87 High Point, another awesome team. They also have a pair of egregious losses. They lost to Mercer, and they lost to 244 North Florida. Mercer apparently the kryptonite in this conference. But stylistically, this is a fun game. Chattanooga's a little bit taller, but Greensboro outranks them in rebounding, 139 to 234. And again, small conferences, you see stuff like this. But a lot of it is just the aggressiveness on the offensive glass. Otherwise, Chattanooga 21st in effective field goal percentage, 10th in interior scoring, 85th from three. The problem is Greensboro is like 150 spots ahead of Chattanooga in every single defensive category. They're top 62 inside and out. So yeah, Chattanooga is good at scoring. Greensboro is really good on defense. Things are not going to come easy for Chattanooga. On the other side, Greensboro is 183rd in effective field goal, 299th at interior scoring, but 51st from three. They do have some problems scoring, but when they are shooting the ball, their best path is typically from the three-point line. It's still a pretty tough matchup for this Greensboro team shooting the ball. They do take a lot of threes, so for what it's worth, they do know their strengths and they are applying them. Otherwise, they might have more avenues. This team is facing Chattanooga, who's 292 in total defense, 296 on the perimeter. So this Greensboro team, they should have a few more opportunities to potentially take advantage of that three-point defense just because they're going to shoot the ball a decent amount. But yeah, both these teams actually shoot a ton of three-pointers. It's an awesome game if you like watching that kind of stuff. And that's enough for me to lean Greensboro's direction. We make this just outside the spread of 1.5. I think you could play 2 here. But this is like an awesome conference. Legitimately, 5 to 6 teams could win this conference. And it's not just Greensboro. I think if you want to look at some other teams that could potentially win this just briefly before we move on in the SoCon. Again, Chattanooga is number 1, Greensboro is number 2, but actually the highest rated team in power rankings is Samford. They're 104. They're sitting in 3rd, tied with East Tennessee State. The 4th highest ranking is Wofford. They're currently in 5th at 127. And then East Tennessee State is 132nd overall. They're in 4th, tied for 3rd. And then Furman in 6th place is at 151. There's a lot of teams live to win this conference. So the SoCon, definitely something you need to pay attention to as we head towards March Madness. Conference USA, we have Jacksonville State takes on Liberty. Spread of 7 points in favor of the home Liberty team. Total is 134. No major injuries in this game. Another battle, number 1 and number 2 in Conference USA. Awesome game. Jacksonville State took the first one, 72-61 on their home floor on February 1st. Jacksonville State crushed Liberty on the glass and hit significantly more free throws. Some matchups I think might be in play in this contest as well. Resume, Jacksonville State 1-1 against the top 100. Their lone win is against Liberty. They've now racked up 8 losses outside the top 100. They have a pair of losses outside the top 200. Air Force at 310, Toledo at 236. So it's still a pretty good body of work. They're mostly taking care of business against who they should. Liberty is 2-0 against the top 100. They beat Kansas State and McNeese State. The McNeese State win is awesome. Their worst loss is to UTEP, who's 145. Liberty is a pretty strong favorite to represent Conference USA right now, but it's still a race that's definitely not decided, evidenced by their loss in this very matchup earlier this year. But like Middle Tennessee State's 122nd overall, that barely trails Jacksonville State. Even a Louisiana Tech and a Kennesaw State a little bit lower down the rankings, they're live as well. There's really only one team outside the top 150 in power rankings. That's Florida International. So a very balanced conference. Most of the games in this conference are competitive, but Liberty's still the favorite. Anyway, stylistically in this game, the biggest concern I have with Liberty is their seating size advantages almost across the board. They don't play a tall lineup. They're 280th in effective height. They're 296 in rebounding. Jacksonville State's 120th in effective height, 61st in rebounding. They absolutely annihilated Liberty on the glass in the first game. So that's going to be a concern anytime Liberty takes the court. That's about as far as the advantages go, though. Liberty is awesome at shooting the ball. 6th in effective field goal percentage. Jacksonville State's 203rd. Liberty's 23rd in total defense. Jacksonville's 155th. Jacksonville State's a little better defensively on the inside, But that's not where Liberty plays. They're 11th in three-point percentage, and they shoot the 27th most three-pointers in the country. Jacksonville State is 163rd at three-point defense, so this is certainly a matchup Liberty can exploit. And honestly, what it comes down to is, can you be a little more aggressive on the glass? Can you box out these players defensively and not allow so many offensive boards? If you can figure out some ways to mitigate your height, Liberty should win this game. We played a -6.5 in the spot. It's moved to 7, a number I still think is decent. We make it closer to -8, as you can see on the screen, 63 to about 71. We'll play Liberty at home, the top team in Conference USA. Now we're getting a little greasy. William & Mary takes on Towson. 5.5 point spread in favor of the home team. The total is 146. This is an awesome conference with awesome games up top tonight. This is a matchup between number 3 and number 1 in the CAA. William & Mary is tied for number 3. They actually come in behind a fair amount of teams in power rankings. More on that in a second. But these games are really important for seeding in this conference that features double byes. The only injury is Noah Collier for William & Mary. Towson's healthy. This game is not a rematch. William & Mary is 0-1 against the top 100. They got slaughtered by VCU. And their best win is against number 161 Charleston. They have 4 losses outside the top 200. They bottomed out with 2 sub-300 losses to NC Central and Old Dominion. Towson is actually in first place of this conference, but they're behind like Wilmington in metrics. Resume-wise, they're 0-3 against the top 100, but they played respectable against St. Mary's and UC Irvine. Those were single-digit losses. Their best win is against number 120 Wilmington. They only have 1 loss outside the top 200. It was to UMBC at 285. Resumes aside, neither team comes in with a tall lineup. Towson is still effective rebounding the ball. They're 81st. William & Mary is 243rd. That gap extends further when you look at the offensive glass, so immediate advantage for the home team, the favorite. William & Mary is 59th at effective field goal percentage. They're strong inside, 21st scoring there. Not as effective shooting the 3. They're 152nd, but they shoot 3-pointers at the 3rd highest rate in the country. So not the most effective composition when you look at the offense. Towson can't shoot. 326 at effective field goal percentage, 323 inside, 264 from the perimeter. They have the rebounding advantage, and they're certainly reliant on them. Think of this as like a poor man's Texas A&M roster. The issue is defensively, Towson is so far ahead. 139 compared to William & Mary at 269. William & Mary's outside the top 300 at interior defense. Again, some of that evidenced by like their rebounding numbers, stuff like that. At the end of the day, we make this basically right on the spread. If you were forcing me to take a side, we do show the slightest of value William & Mary's direction at the +5.5. That's what I play if you force me, but this is not likely to be a game we play or talk about much. Just want to highlight the top of the CAA. But there is a game we do have a little more interest in playing in this conference. That'll be the next one we get to. UNC Wilmington takes on Campbell. The spread is 3.5 points in favor of the road team. The total in the game is 141. Mostly clean bill of health. Jason Sanani for Campbell's the only injury. This is a match between number 2 and number 5 in the CAA. It's actually a rematch. Wilmington won the first matchup 77-69 on January 4th. They were at home. Neither team shot the ball well from the perimeter, at least. But Wilmington did shoot 33 free throws. They dominated the glass. A matchup they should be able to exploit again. But again, looking at the CAA, an awesome conference. Wilmington comes in as the highest power-rated team in the conference, despite sitting at second, chasing Towson, of course. But the most likely representative is this Wilmington team. Interestingly, Campbell ranks ahead of William & Mary in power rankings, despite being behind them in the standings. And interestingly enough, when you just go down the list of power rankings, Wilmington's 1, they're at 2 in conference. Towson's number 2 in power rankings, number 1 in conference. Charleston's number 3 in both. Number 4 is actually Elon, who sits all the way down at 7th in conference. So if you're looking for like a dark horse in the CAA, look no further than Elon. But Campbell's not far behind them. They're currently in 5th. William & Mary, nowhere to be found. They sit at 209th, not super likely to represent the conference. But if they could secure a bye, again, they have double byes in this conference, you never know. Resume-wise, Campbell's 0-3 against the top 100. They have one top 200 win all season that came against Elon. They have 4 losses outside the top 300, so it's a little dicey for Campbell resume-wise. Wilmington's 0-1 against the top 100, but they have 9 wins in the top 200 versus Campbell's 1. And they only have 1 loss outside the top 300. That was Howard. Again, Campbell has 4 of those. I can't overstate the interior advantage. It's one of the largest I think we could possibly draw up in the conference. Wilmington has a monumental advantage inside. They're 109th in height, 40th in rebounding, 114th at interior scoring. Campbell's 251st in height, 261st in rebounding, 332nd at interior scoring. This was a huge mismatch in the first game. I don't know how Campbell actually fixes this, honestly. For Campbell, they do hold the overall defensive advantage, but most of that comes from their 14th ranked perimeter defense. Wilmington's not shooting threes. They're 236 at three-point rate. They just attack the rim incessantly, and that's what they should do in this matchup. When you add up all the mathematics, the efficiency metrics, you're going to get something inside the spread. I am going against it. Like mathematically, our model has this inside the 3.5. I just don't see how Campbell has an answer for Wilmington on the glass inside. So if you force me to play this, I would take Wilmington minus the 3.5. That's where I lean. The only injury in the game is on the Campbell side, Sanani. It's tough for me to back the numbers here. And when I have this large of a disagreement against what my model tells me, usually it's just a stay away, and that's where we will probably end up, but it's a Wilmington or pass. Definitely debating this one. All right, now we're going to get even greasier. Southeast Missouri takes on SIU Edwardsville. I actually saw this Edwardsville team play last year, I think. They played Marquette. Maybe that was 2 years ago. Anyway, this is the Ohio Valley Conference. It is a rematch between number 1 and number 3. So again, a huge game in this conference. I'm going to call them by their abbreviations. SEMO is what we'll refer to Southeast Missouri, and SIU, that's what we'll refer to Edwardsville as. SEMO took the first game 80-64. They were at home. It was on December 21st, so pretty early in the season. SIU only shot 27% from 3. They got crushed on the glass. But this is an important game in this conference, which is basically a 3-horse race. Tennessee State's somewhat involved in there as well, but it's basically SEMO, SIU, and Little Rock with the best power ratings. So you need to pay attention to these 3 teams. Up at the top, let's talk SEMO first. Actually, I don't even think I read the spread in total. Excuse me. So right now, it's a 1-point spread in favor of the home team Edwardsville, 139 total. I believe this was a pick-em when I first looked. But anyway, resume-wise, SEMO is 0-3 against the top 100. They got crushed every time. That's going to be the case with this conference for the most part. The league doesn't offer a lot of opportunities, and this is low level. We're mostly looking at 16 seeds. SEMO's best win is against Little Rock in conference. They're number 210. They have 2 losses outside the top 300, one to Moorhead, one to Lindenwood. Neither good, but it is what it is. We're talking low-level stuff here. SIU is 0-2 against the top 100, also got crushed both times. Best win is against 216 Indiana State. 3 losses outside the top 300. Funny enough, they gave Green Bay one of their lone wins, so props to you, UWGB. Big night in the horizon, but not as big as some of these conferences. Mostly that will be decided over the weekend, so we didn't focus a lot on the horizon. Resumes aside, SIU was 98th in effective height, 158th in rebounding. That's a big advantage. SEMO's 272 in effective height, 276 in rebounding. Interestingly, this was not a big factor in their first game. So I don't know. Low-level competition, it's hard to really figure out what's going on sometimes with some of these players, but it is what it is. Wasn't a big factor. Shooting-wise, SEMO was 137 in effective field goal, 128 from 3. SIU was a big problem shooting the ball. They're 247th in effective field goal, 157 from 3. Interestingly, for basically being 2 top 150 three-point shooting teams, neither of them shoot a lot of them. Both teams do play strong defense. We have 149 against 162. SEMO is 24th in three-point defense, but SIU is 22nd at interior defense. Again, neither team shoots a lot of threes. So SIU being 22nd at interior defense is a little more important in this game. Turnover margin slightly favors SEMO. Fouls come in slightly in favor of SIU. 2 teams that are better on defense versus the shooting. I think SIU is a stronger play. We had this a lean as a pick. It actually just moved, before the show, right before the show started. So we're not showing as much edge there now that this is at the 1. I'm kicking myself a little bit that I didn't play it right before the show started. But that's where we'll lean. Big games in this conference down the stretch. Make sure you watch the Ohio Valley. It's a 3-horse race, maybe 4 if you include Tennessee State. Out west we go. Cal Baptist takes on Seattle. 3-point spread in favor of the home Seattle team. The total is 138. This is the WAC. Great conference. Number 3 versus number 7. I will say this is a little bit deceptive. Seattle's top 4 in power rankings in this conference. So certainly not dead, similar to some other spots we've talked about, like the CAA. If you're looking for a dark horse in these conferences when tournaments start up next week, if Seattle comes in at like number 7 in the standings, this team is much better than those numbers indicate. Could be something to look for in the futures market. Cal Baptist won the first matchup 61-59 at home on January 4th. Greasy game. Both teams were below 16% from 3. Both teams had 13 turnovers. Just ugly, ugly, ugly. There are huge injuries in this game. Malik Goma for Seattle, but the biggest one, Dominique Daniels for Cal Baptist. Prior to his injury, which he's missed 1 game now, I believe that was just the most recent game, if I'm not mistaken, he was a top 10 scorer in the country before that. So that's the first thing to talk about matchup-wise. This could be dead in the water if Dominic Daniels doesn't play. Resume-wise, Cal Baptist 0-3 against the top 100. Their best win is against Grand Canyon, number 101, the strong favorite to come out of this conference, but they've really disappointed this year. They only have 3 losses, Cal Baptist, that is outside the top 200. They bottomed out against number 290 Tarleton State. Seattle is 2-1 against the top 100. They beat UC San Diego, who we talked about previously, and they also beat Washington. Washington has a lot of flaws, but they still have elite players like Great Osobor. That's about it, honestly. Seattle has 5 losses outside the top 200. They also bottomed out against Tarleton, apparently the kryptonite of the WAC. It's a wildly even matchup. This is probably, I think, the only time I've said this. These teams are so close in so many metrics. Cal Baptist is a little better scoring inside. Seattle's 288th at interior defense, so matchup Cal Baptist direction. Seattle's a little better at shooting threes. Cal Baptist is 227th, so a little edge Seattle's direction. Both teams are solid in rebounding, comparable in the turnover margin. I honestly think this probably comes down to the status of Dominique Daniels. If he's out, I don't think -3 is enough. We currently have him projected in. So when you look at the spread, we're projecting down below 68.4 to 71.1. That assumes Daniels plays, which would make Cal Baptist a nice play at the +3. But it's a late news game, which, again, we try to attack. If you're in the Discord, you'll see if there's any actionable play on that. But big game in the WAC as we approach conference tourney season. Last up for today in the American, UAB takes on Wichita. This is a big conference for postseason, largely because it's so volatile. You see upsets every other day in this conference. Everyone's kind of trailing Memphis and North Texas in terms of power ratings. Those are the only top 200 or top 100 teams you have in this conference. But right outside that, you have UAB at 107. You have Florida Atlantic at 109. You have Wichita at 124. There's a couple teams hanging around the top, like 150. The only teams that are sort of dead to rights are Charlotte, UTSA, Tulsa, and probably South Florida. Everyone else has like somewhat respectable rankings. Even Rice, who's in second to last. They're 167 in power rankings. You know, that's not far behind a team like UAB. Those teams, if they played at a neutral floor, that spread would be like 3 points. Anyway, let's talk about this game. UAB versus Wichita State. The spread in the game is 1 in favor of the home Wichita State. The total is 154. The only injury is Justin Hill. He's listed probable. The only reason I put that in there is he missed 5 games, returned, only played 4 minutes, missed the last game again. So what do we get out of him? The probable tag, he was that 2 games ago when he only played 4 minutes. Just want to say he's probably not 100% healthy. This is the number 3 team, UAB, versus number 7. Again, awesome conference overall. UAB is 1-4 against the top 100. That lone win did come against North Texas, who's near the top of the conference. They have 5 losses outside the top 100. Their worst one was against 232 Vermont in the opener. Wichita, 4-3 against the top 100, beat Memphis, beat Kansas State, beat Minnesota, beat Northern Iowa. They do have 7 losses outside the top 100. They have 3 outside the top 200, bottoming out against Tulsa at 284. So they have the highs, they have more lows. UAB a little more steady in between. If you want to look for some data points that might have influenced that, Wichita State only has one of their top 5 players that's actually played in every game. Ronnie DeGray missed 12 games. Justin Hill's now missed 6. We're questioning his status tonight. Everyone else in the top 5 has played, they've missed at least 1 game. So Wichita is a tough team to evaluate. They've been injured this year. They could be at full strength tonight, depending on Hill. As far as stylistics go, UAB is 133 in effective height, 15th in rebounding. That's a big advantage. Wichita is 218th in effective height, 69th in rebounding. So these are advantages for UAB. Wichita's biggest problem this year is their scoring. They're 257 in effective field goal percentage, entirely reliant on the interior. They don't have a single player that shoots the 3 well. Even with some of the players that were hurt, like DeGray, they're not 3-point shooters. But they know this. They're 357th at 3-point rate. That's a bottom 10 rate in the entire country. So at least they know their weaknesses. But the problem is UAB's biggest weakness is defending the 3. They're actually decent inside. A lot of that just coming down to Yaxel Lendenberg, the player of the year in the American. So it's like strength on strength in this spot. And then Wichita's not going to shoot the 3. So I don't really know if the UAB weakness matters. On the other side, UAB can score anywhere. They don't take a lot of 3-pointers, but they're still 128th in 3-point percentage. They have the player of the year inside. That's the strength of Wichita's defense, but it is worth noting at least. I played a +2 when this opened. We make this right on the +1, so it's pretty efficient right now, but I think you could still look to a UAB side. I also don't know if this is done moving. I would maybe expect some buyback on Wichita now that they're fully healthy. It's a little bit dicey, but we did play this one. In a game we didn't talk about, but one we did play, I took an under in Denver, UMKC. That's in the Summit League. Not the best conference to watch tonight, but under 136 was the number we played. Should be a slow game, not the most efficient offensively. And otherwise, a couple big games that we didn't talk about. Number 3, number 4 in Conference USA, Middle Tennessee, New Mexico State face-off. North Texas plays AAU, which is a great night for those of you interested in mid-majors. And before we go, kind of trying to flip the show a little bit, see how it affects retention. I think people have been leaving early when we do these long breakdowns of the previous night. But if you want some results and talk on that, I'll talk about it briefly. It was a night where most games played to the spread, at least like within 1 to 2 points of the spread. The big news pieces, Michigan State had that crazy buzzer beater half-court shot over Maryland. They should have won the game anyway. They mostly led throughout the contest. Vanderbilt upset Texas A&M by 2 points. That was really good for their bubble hopes and keeping extra SEC teams in the field. Kentucky barely beats Oklahoma. We had a 2.5 there. They win by 1, so really close to the spread. Nothing really to be seen. Auburn slaughtered Ole Miss. Nothing too much to be seen there. That was one we expected for the most part. I think the most frustrating result for me was Texas going into overtime. I think there's nothing more tilting than covering a game by default at the end of regulation. For example, we had Texas +5 against Arkansas. So now you grade that at the end of regulation, it's a tie game, cover. You go into OT, they lose by 5 and it pushes. So just a frustrating result overall in that contest. I hate this Texas team. In fact, I played money on them, a bit surprising. But anyway, a few others. We had Ohio State beat USC, huge for their bubble hopes, a big road win for them. They needed it. SMU beats Cal. They don't have a big win, but they just need to stack wins to get in. That was one we did win. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Boise State with a huge win against Utah State. Awesome for their bubble hopes that they don't win the Mountain West. They're very live on the at-large picture at this point. Indiana got a win over Penn State despite Malik Renault being sick, so big win for them. And we'll end it there. That's about it for the bubble talk from yesterday's results. Thank you guys for watching. Much appreciated. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, all that. It helps a ton. If you've done that or watched at any length, I thank you. I appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow for a shorter Friday, and then we'll hopefully talk some conference tournaments. Until then, good luck.